Welcome to Roots and Branches of Lehi, the podcast where we get to know the faces, stories, and lives that make up our community. I'm Ryan Harding, and I started this podcast as a way for us all to connect with the people we live alongside. Growing up in a small town, I learned that connections go beyond blood. They're built through shared experiences, friendships, and the moments we celebrate together. Each week, we'll sit down with someone new from Lehi to share their unique story, their passions, and what they love most about living here. So whether you've been here for years or just arrived, join us as we deepen our roots and reach out to our branches one story at a time. Welcome, Quinn Allred, to Lehi Roots and Branches.
Oh, okay.
Where we get to know the people of Lehi, and you're one of those guys. Okay. So, but well, thanks for coming. I appreciate you coming. So, give us a little background of you. What you grow up here. Where are you from originally?
Well, I moved here to Lehi. My parents moved here to Lehi in 1956.
Okay.
I was in the fourth grade when I started.
Okay.
Carl Miller was my fourth grade school teacher.
Nice. Okay.
So I've known Lehi since then. So
yeah, long time.
That's about it.
Okay. and so then you've been here ever since then. That's a long time. Okay.
Well, other than my time on a LDS mission and
sure
4 years of active duty in the military. So.
Okay. And so let's talk about that. So what led you to join the military?
Basically, when I come home from my mission, it was during the Vietnam War. I got home in 1967.
Okay.
It was at the height of the draft was just beginning.
Okay.
I wanted to go to school, but none of the colleges in Utah were accepting undergraduates. They were saving their deferments for postgraduates.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I had nowhere to go. So it was hard to find a job. I was just a high school graduate, and so when I got my draft notice, I just went down and joined. I decided that if I was going to go into the military, I was going to do something that I wanted to do, rather than let them choose.
Sure. Well, and so did you end up going to Vietnam?
Yes.
Okay. And so tell me how that affected you.
Well, the story behind that is I joined the Army Security Agency, which was it was a 4-year commitment rather than a 3-year commitment.
Okay.
And one of their selling points was there is no ASA in Vietnam, which was true. Yeah. There was no ASA. The Army Security Agency was a branch of the National Security Agency. It was a military branch. We answered to only the NSA and had our own command structure, and you had to have a top secret security clearance to belong to it. And I went through that. Basically, as a draftee, I went into Fort Ord, California for basic infantry training, and if my clearance hadn't come through, I would have been in the infantry anyway.
Oh.
Because I was being trained as a scout sniper and a mortarman in the infantry.
Yeah.
So my preliminary clearance came through, and I was sent from there to Monterey, California, to Defense Language Institute, because I scored high on the aptitude test for learning languages. And there they assigned me Spanish, which I already knew how to speak, because I went to Mexico on my mission.
I was just going to say, where did you go on your mission? Okay, that's perfect.
So when I challenged the course, passed, I was only there a month. They sent me on to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where the Army Security Agency did 90% of their training. And I was supposed to go in there as a crypto analyst. Okay. And they didn't have any classes going, so they moved me over into, the Army. Basically, you do whatever the Army tells you to do.
That's kind of how the military works, right? You do what you're told.
So I was sent to basic Morse code, and there you had to learn Morse code and be able to copy on a mill, which is a typewriter with all uppercase letters and numbers.
Okay.
Numbers and everything. So, and to pass the class, you had to be able to copy 15 groups per minute, which is 5 random letters broken up into five letter groups.
Okay.
So you do that 15, and then Then you moved on, and then there was several different options. And one of the options was high-speed intercept operator, which you had to learn to copy up to 30 groups per minute.
Okay.
And I never could copy that fast, so I was sent to what they called a special identification techniques operator. There I had to be able to send and receive Morse code up to 25 groups per minute, which was easy for me to do. So that's why I went through that 27-week course and passed it, and I passed in the upper 10% of my class. So I was sent on to an analyst to be able to analyze and plot on the map locations of enemy transmitters. So, and then I got my orders to go out of that school to be deployed, and I was being deployed to Bad Aibling, Germany. And between that time and the time that I deployed, President Johnson decided he needed 50,000 more troops in Vietnam.
Oh.
So they changed my orders while I was on leave, and I was sent to Vietnam.
Okay.
I went to Oakland, California.
Yeah.
And loaded onto a plane,
and off you
my
went.
next stop was in Saigon.
Wow. And how long were you there for?
I was there, my first tour of duty was a year.
Okay.
And then I extended my tour so I could fly. I wanted to fly. There was at that time, it was a top secret program called Left Bank. The NSA had developed these helicopters that I could do the same thing I was doing at the base camps, but only in a platform, an air platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned to fly my position in a UH-1 Huey helicopter, and we flew low and slow in circles until we would locate enemy ground units. Then we'd sent that information on to the field commanders.
Okay.
We were basically a direct support unit, and I was in direct support of the 5th Special Forces and the 4th Infantry Division. Mm-hmm. And I flew in 8 UH-1 helicopters and OV-1 Mohawk.
Okay.
It was a twin-seat turboprop, and we flew up and down the rivers, and it had side search radar. Okay. We would look under the trees.
Okay.
Fly up the rivers and the Ho Chi Minh Trail over into Cambodia and Laos.
Yeah.
That was all hush-hush, and we weren't there. And so I did that for about, from February into May.
Okay.
And then I was what they call a TDY, temporary duty. So I didn't have to fill a whole tour. So it was only about 6 or 7 months that 5 or 6 months. And I came back, and it was such a new platform that they sent me to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And I taught classes there on how to run that position out of an airborne platform.
Oh, that's super cool. Yeah.
And then I left from there to go to Vent Hill Farm Station.
Okay.
In Virginia, and that was a top secret installation, Army installation in Warrenton, Virginia.
Okay.
It's where it was a worldwide intercept area.
Okay.
None of these places exist anymore. So.
Okay. And going back to your Vietnam thing, any stories stand out from, for you? Like, anything that defined that experience, or any kind of thing that, obviously that's...
Other than boredom.
Sure. And that's boredom's good actually when you're at war, I guess, right?
Well, I always told my children that the Vietnam experience was 90% boredom and 10% sheer terror.
Okay. Sure.
Looking back on it, it's probably the crews that I flew with, 16 of them are still there.
Okay.
They were lost, never found. And so I always watch to see if any of these recovery efforts have ever found any of these. Jaguar 21 went down, and I was supposed to be on that flight, but I had been called by the company commander to give a briefing to the field commander that morning, so they took me off that flight, and I stayed behind to do the briefing to the commanding general of the 4th Infantry Division.
Wow.
And at the end of the briefing, we found out that the helicopter had gone down.
Wow.
And they were looking for it.
Wow.
They had sent, and so we got in all of the helicopters we could. We went out looking, and we found the wreckage, but there was nobody there. There was no evidence of anybody dying.
Oh, wow.
We destroyed the helicopter
Mm-hmm.
because it was everything on that helicopter was
Pretty important.
top secret.
Yeah.
So we destroyed the helicopter, and then we spent weeks looking for them, and we never found any evidence as to where they went, and no ground intelligence to find out if they had been captured or killed or whatever. So.
And still to this day, you don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Not to this day. That
Wow.
was probably the most divining moment. But
Sure. Sure, because you would have been on that.
if I'd have been on that flight, I'd been there. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
you always wonder, why me?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's always a question you would ask. Yeah.
So, and then there was other incidents. Most of our ground-based operations was done in the back of a 3/4 ton truck van,
Mm-hmm.
and had a array of antennas, directional antennas.
Mm-hmm.
We could tell which direction the radio signal was coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and by taking a bearing on that on a compass, you would triangulate, and we could tell at them distances. That was, if you were 25 miles away, it was about an 85%.
Okay.
85% chance that it was right there.
Okay.
And then they would call in artillery on those
spots.
bomb
Sure.
raids and artillery on those areas, because these units we listened to were 4,000 or 5,000 men. You know.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
your chances of doing some damage was probably pretty
Probably
good.
pretty
So,
high. Sure. Yeah. Wow.
So, but other than that, I spent my off time working in a orphanage.
Okay.
We found out that the children I was in a town called Pleiku,
Mm-hmm.
which was up in the Central Highlands. It was in the mountainous country, and it's where the Montyards mostly lived in Vietnam. That was indigenous people. And there were a lot of orphans in these Catholic orphanages. And we found out that at night that the Viet Cong would collect their taxes.
Oh.
And they would actually steal food from the children and leave them destitute. So a few of us got together, and we would go into the orphanages, and we would build hiding places for their food.
Wow. Good.
And
Good.
then we got along great with the kids. The kids loved Americans.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, especially you were helping them too.
Yeah.
So.
And I had the mother superior at one of them she knew that I was Mormon, and she always laughed when she said, what was a Mormon doing there in a Catholic Catholic
Orphanage.
orphanage?
Sure.
And so, but we got along great. We got along great, and we would actually take in the military. We got a liquor and a cigarette
Allowance, I guess.
allowance every
Yeah.
month, and we were allowed to buy so much. Well, we would take that and sell it
Sure.
to other GIs
Sure.
that partook of it.
Yeah.
And we would take that money and buy food in the town
Yeah.
and give it to the orphanages.
Oh, that's
so. And I did that for the whole 15 months that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
But later on in life, I was on Facebook, and I got a message on Messenger one day, and it was a picture, and it was of me and a little girl, and I had her on my foot, and we were dancing. She was like probably 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah.
Well, this was the little girl,
Oh, wow.
and she remembered my name.
Oh, wow.
So she looked me up on Facebook, and we still correspond to this
Sure.
day.
Sure.
She's probably in her late 50s now, and
Sure.
and
Yeah.
married to an ex-Marine in Minnesota.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Not Minnesota, Michigan.
Michigan. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's an ex-Marine, and he's a county sheriff up there.
Oh, wow.
Has 4 children together, and
Oh, that's so.
she's a sweetheart. And we send Christmas cards together.
Sure.
But she was a boat person. Her and her grandmother, when Saigon fell in 1975, I had already been home for, almost 3 years. And the story she tells is her and her grandmother found her in the orphanage, and they walked barefooted from Pleiku to Nha Trang, which was about 200 miles.
Wow.
And all the time they were there, the Viet Cong and the communists were trying to kill them.
Wow.
So they would do it only at night.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally got put on a boat, and she ended up in the Philippines. And at that time, the American government was accepting refugees out of the Philippines, and then she was sent to Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Okay.
And a young couple from Michigan adopted her and changed her name.
Oh, wow.
And she was raised as a with an American name, and
Yeah.
and the whole. Her name is Janet now. So
Okay.
it was Mai back then.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool that she remembered you, and she had that picture still.
Yeah.
That survived that. Yeah.
And she has a group on Facebook that honors all of the veterans.
Oh, sure.
To this day, she's very adamant about
Yeah.
remembering the veterans that helped.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, because you literally helped her, right? Yeah. That's great. Well, so how did your military service, I guess, shape your understanding of community and different things? Because obviously we're going to talk kind of what you ended up doing post, the war and stuff. But like, how do you think that shaped you? Your feelings on community and really trying to.
Well, just a little background in that. I left Lehi in 1965, 66, 67. Back in those days, the Lehi Free Press, there was a lady that worked for him. Her name was Fowler.
Okay.
She worked for the Lehi Free Press, but she always wrote. She was the mother of one of my classmates, Bill Fowler.
Okay.
And she was always to every one of our sporting events, school events. She followed everything. But when I left, not so much on my mission, but because mail in Mexico was horrible.
Sure. Yeah.
You didn't get your mail.
Yeah. It still is.
But when I went to Vietnam, I got the Lehi Free Press. Sometimes it came once a month, sometimes it came weekly. But she made sure that all of the actually anybody in the military that was from Lehi, she would send them copies of the Lehi Free Press to let them know what was going on back home.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Betty Fowler, get my brain working, but she was always a sweetheart, and I went and told her that when I got home. So
yeah, good.
And it brought tears to her eyes because she knew that we knew. So
yeah.
But yeah, I whenever I thought of home, I thought of Lehi. So.
Yeah.
When I did come back, I've been here ever since. So, yeah.
That's great that she was able to give you that connection to home.
Yeah.
By doing that. I mean, that's.
Well, see, when I grew up, all of it was all World War I veterans.
Okay.
They basically run Lehi.
Yeah.
Herman Goetz was the stake president. He was a World War I veteran.
Mm-hmm.
All of the merchants up and down Main Street were all World War I veterans. Tommy Powers and Clem Laney and George Laney. He was a World War I veteran. So I knew all of these, and I knew their kids because I went to school with them.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then you came back and tell me about your profession. What did you go into?
I went to school on the GI Bill. I went to Utah. Back then it was the Utah Trade College.
Okay.
I wanted to work in the medical field, so I went into X-ray technician.
Okay.
Well, when I got home, I was let out of the military just a little early, like 2 months early, so I could make it into school.
Mm-hmm.
And come to find out that the X-ray technician class was not an accredited class, and I couldn't draw GI Bill money
for that class.
So I transferred over into heating and air conditioning.
Okay.
It was HVAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I went to school for 2 years. I got my associate degree. Now it's called UVU.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yep, I've heard of it.
Yeah, it used to be down on University Avenue in Provo.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I went to school there, and then but when I first came home out of the service, I got into what they call the Vietnam Veteran Readjustment Program.
Okay.
And you was able to build your own home on sweat equity.
Wow.
So if you could my dad was a contractor, so him and me and my brother built my first home over on 5th West and 6th North over there in the Stewart subdivision. And that's got my GI loan and my GI Bill, and I basically, the military shaped what I did for the future also. So,
Well, and so when did you become the head of Lehi's American Legion? When did that take place?
well, basically I made a living from the time I started out working out of school to a place that sold oxygen and nitrogen to Geneva. It was called National Cylinder Gas back then. And then it was sold out several times and ended up, when Geneva was shut down, I lost my job there. But basically I've been in refrigeration and air conditioning, low temperature refrigeration right on up. And I've had 4 or 5 jobs since I graduated. My last job was working for the Larry H. Miller Group as the maintenance superintendent for Jordan Commons in Sandy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I spent 11 years there.
Okay, good amount of time. Yeah. And so then, when did you join the American Legion? When did you become head of that?
I joined the American Legion. Well, I joined it right out of 1973.
Okay.
But I never went to any meetings until probably 2003.
Okay.
Basically, just made a living till then.
Yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable when I first came back. It was the veterans there. I just did not. They were all older than me.
Sure.
And the meetings were boring.
Sure. Yeah.
They haven't changed much. But I rode a motorcycle. I had a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and I was approached one day by a guy to join the American Legion Riders. I thought, well, yeah, that'd be fun. Get together with a bunch of veterans and ride. And basically that got me back into the American Legion, and I attended the meetings. You had to attend the meetings to belong to the club. And we went on a lot of fun motorcycle rides and the whole 9 yards. So I can't remember the post commander, is Harold Finn.
Okay.
Harold Finn was the post commander when I was in there, and then he stepped down and another gentleman took his place, and I can't remember his name, but he had a stroke and couldn't perform as the post commander, and that was in 2010. And nobody would step up and take the position. So after about 6 or 7 months of that, I just said, well, at the time I was the only Lehi resident that was a member of the post. So I just went up after a meeting, I said, if you guys is looking for somebody to conduct the meetings, I'll do it. So the next week I was the post commander.
You got the job.
And I've had it ever since.
Wow.
So it's been 15 years. And I'm going to give it up this month in May.
Okay.
We need somebody younger and with, I don't know if it's drive or the ambition.
Sure.
To keep going. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so 15 years is a long time. Tell me.
It's a 1-year project. Every time I held elections, we hold elections every year.
Yeah.
And they all say, well, where the hell you think you're going?
You're still in it, buddy.
I'm still doing it, so. I've seen a lot of veterans come and go. We just buried one of our old stalwarts, and that was Wilkin. We called him Wilkie.
Mm-hmm.
He had a barber shop here in Lehi.
Okay.
When I was a kid, he used to give haircuts. So
yeah.
He went from that to one of my compatriots. So, and Carl Moore, all of the old veterans, World War II veterans, are just about gone.
Wow.
We have one World War II veteran left in our post. Jesse Veach. He served in the World War and Vietnam.
Okay, both.
Yeah. It's 96 years old now, so.
It's up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's up there.
Yeah, so.
So, 15 years serving in that post, what would you say some of the things that you're proud of and that you've, that has happened?
Since I've been the post commander, we've basically spent most of our time serving the youth of Lehi. That's through giving them scholarships.
Okay.
We have 2 programs. The premier program of the American Legion, statewide and nationwide, is Boys State.
Okay.
And that's for juniors in high school that go to Weber State, and they learn how the government works. So it's basically a civics class.
Mm-hmm.
They're given a 1-week course on how to form a government from city right on up to national and state and national. And they're there for a week, and speakers come and talk to them, and they run for office. They learn how the government works, and they learn the Robert's rules of running a meeting and the whole 9 yards. So, and then we have them come back. A lot of them we sponsor, and we pay their way up there, when we have the money. And Lehi City and the Civic Improvement Association have been major donors to getting us the money to run that program. So we give away a small scholarship. Our last boys' state, we gave each one of them, we paid their way, which is $500. So
Sure.
And we sent 7 boys, and then the auxiliary sends the girls, and they do the same thing. So. Mm-hmm. And then the other program we have is the oratorical contest, and that is the children from, I think it's junior high through high school. Yeah, it is. And they speak on, they have to memorize a speech on on the Constitution and what it means to them, and then they're given a subject to make it about. So it's an 8 to 10 minute speech, which is daunting.
Sure. Yes.
Especially for a junior high school kid.
Especially for them. Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. Anyway, they get up in front of a group, and the contest is held in front of a group. They have to stand up in front of a group, no podium, and memorize and recite it from memory. And then their second speech is a 3 to 5 minute speech that they have to give on one of the amendments to the Constitution. And they don't know what it is until they get there.
Oh, wow. So they just got to prepare it all.
So they got to be prepared to talk about any one of the 27 amendments of the Constitution, which most high school students today graduate and don't even know how many amendments there are to the Constitution. They don't even know what the Constitution says.
Sure.
So these kids are they're part of the elite that graduate from high school, as far as government and civics is concerned.
Yeah, so, have that knowledge, yeah.
But they're sent from post to district to state and then to nation. And if they make it all the way to the nation, they're eligible for an $18,000 scholarship plus, because during that contest back in wherever they hold the national convention, they're offered, all of your major colleges, especially colleges that teach government or politics, wants to hear these kids. One of the girls that won our post, she's now a law clerk for one of the Supreme Court justices. Pretty proud of her.
As you should be. Yeah. That's awesome.
She's not from Lehi, but
that's okay. We still love her.
She's from the Valley.
Yeah.
As a lot of people don't understand that the American Legion is, when I was growing up, it was all Lehi people. But the American Legion is bigger than that.
Of course.
It's nationwide.
Yeah.
We have members in our post that are from Provo,
yeah, the
other valley, up in Salt Lake Valley. You don't have to live in the town to be part of that post. So
good,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and therein lies the problem.
Well, you've obviously enjoyed it. What you said, the next leader needs to have ambition and drive. What do you envision for the future? I mean,
I want somebody younger.
Okay, sure.
I'm looking for a younger veteran.
Yeah.
They don't want it. Younger veterans, they need to be heard. They need to be leaders of the community and take an interest in the community. Mm-hmm. And that's what the American Legion does.
Yeah.
Is basically you just keep serving.
Yeah. What are some challenge? So 15 years. Any challenges that you faced, like in that post? What were some of the harder things about that job?
Teaching veterans how to. One of the purposes of the American Legion is to help veterans.
Okay.
PTSD is a huge problem amongst veterans. 22 veterans take their lives every day.
Wow.
Nationwide. That's got to stop.
Yeah, it's too many.
We have a program now called Be the One, and that's to check on the veterans in your post. The worst part about being a veteran is being forgotten.
Sure. Especially
to these younger veterans. Life is hard, but then you add that onto it, and it's even worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, helping veterans, getting them up to the VA, getting them help, mental as well as physical, is one of the major pedestals to the pillars to the American Legion. So we have service officers that help, and all they got to do is ask, and we ask them too.
Yeah.
We don't wait for them to ask. We always check on each other. We even check on veterans that aren't members of our post. There's a lot of veterans here in Lehi that they don't belong to a veterans organization. They served in the National Guard. They don't even consider themselves a veteran. They are a veteran.
Yeah.
They wore that uniform. They're a veteran.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're there to help them or to do anything they need to do. So, and that's the reason I even had anything to do with it. Wouldn't have been for my motorcycle, I would be one of those guys that
doesn't do anything with it.
Doesn't do anything with it. So
yeah.
You got to find an interest.
Yeah.
To be able to do it. So, and I enjoy. We have a breakfast once a month where we just go have breakfast, and they're just veterans, and you just sit around the table, and there's American Legion isn't even mentioned.
Sure.
You just
talking.
Yeah. You listen to their war stories.
Sure. That's good. It sounds like it's brought you a lot of joy, and yeah. I mean, it feels reminiscent of your time helping the orphanage. I mean, you're doing that same kind of thing, as an adult helping the local community here now too, right? I mean, that's that service, oriented desires.
Yeah.
You've continued to do that, I guess.
Yeah, and living here in Lehi, you consider it home, but you remember what it used to be like when you was a kid. And it's not the same place.
Yeah, it's changed.
It has changed a bunch.
Yeah.
We have a class reunion. I graduated in 1965. All of our class members, there was only 97 of us graduated.
Wow.
That year.
Small
now
class.
You have the kids, classes are 2,000-3,000 kids.
Yeah.
They have a class reunion. They don't, because they didn't know each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in Lehi, it used to be that your class was like a family. Everybody knew everybody. You knew everything about everybody.
Sure.
You saw them in the grocery store every day, because we only had 3 grocery stores here in Lehi, and they were really tiny.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And so when we get together as a class, we it's more or less like seeing your brother or your sister rather than your classmate.
Yeah.
And you just and you just know everything about each other. So
yeah.
It's just not going to be that way anymore.
Yeah.
So, and that's sad.
Sure.
That is really sad.
Sure.
So,
well, because that's brought you a lot of joy to have that community, right? That,
Yeah. See, my dad they're building this new civic center.
The Library Civic Center. Yeah.
And it's a replica, basically, of the old tabernacle. I grew up with that tabernacle.
Yeah.
That's where we used to have our father and son banquet.
Oh, nice.
That's where I met Gene Fulmer, the heavyweight champion of the world. And right next door was the seminary, and that's where I got baptized. So,
wow.
Yeah. That was Lehi back then. And the junior high was, when I was growing up, that was the high school.
Yeah.
And in 1959 or 60, I think it was, they built the new high school down by the roller mills, and that became the junior high. Well, it's no longer there.
Yeah.
So, and my father worked for the church, and he was the superintendent that built the new tabernacle, or the stake center, where the old tabernacle used to sit.
Wow.
So,
lots changed.
Yeah, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Growing up, we had 6 policemen, knew every one of them, and they all knew us too.
Hopefully not too intimately, because you were in trouble or something.
Oh, yeah. There was one old policeman, his name was Ray Edwards. He would catch you doing something that you shouldn't be doing. He'd kick your butt.
Sure.
And then he'd take you home, and your dad would kick your butt.
Different times, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, so tell me, how can the community, you talk about veterans, and, how can the community help veterans? I mean, obviously, we can see that you guys are doing a lot of things to help the community, but for those that are listening, how can the community help the veterans?
Well, they basically already do. They thank the veterans for their service.
Yeah.
They know we're there. They do. Most people have a reverence for the veterans, especially the older ones.
Yeah.
And that love from the community to the veterans is still there. The Civic Improvement Association, they recognize us. The Rotary Club has invited us to come and talk to them, and they've even helped some of the kids in our programs, helped them go to Boys and Girls State, and have always backed us. So the community has always been in our court, and they all take care of us. Basically, if it wasn't for the city and this community, the American Legion wouldn't have a place to meet. Way back when the World War I veterans and World War II veterans was running the American Legion here, they were an integral part of the city because they were the city councilmen.
Sure. Yeah, they're very important. That makes sense.
But from Vietnam on, actually Korea and on, the Korean veterans were basically forgotten. Mm-hmm. They just come home and went back into being normal. The Vietnam veterans, when they came home, they were actually hated. Yeah. So we didn't talk about our service. Yeah. And to this day, 90% of them don't talk about it. Yeah. When I came home, I was at Bent Hill Farms in Virginia, and I got married while I was in the service. My wife and I lived there in Virginia, and I was called up on riot duty.
Oh, wow.
For Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I always wondered, after fighting that war in Vietnam and all I went through there, that I would have to sit there and point guns at my own citizens. Yeah. Citizens I fought for. Yeah. So that was traumatic.
I'm sure. It shouldn't be that way.
It should not be that way.
And luckily it seems to not be anymore. So
it's not like that anymore, but and get turned, I wanted to go to college, but basically get turned away by the local schools here because you were a Vietnam veteran and there were postgraduates that needed to get their master's and doctorate degrees. Mm-hmm. And so there wasn't room because of the draft for you to be in school. Hmm. And that put a bitter taste in my mouth.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously it I can tell it didn't define you because obviously you've gone on to do a lot of good. So that's that you didn't swallow that bitter pill to, and internalize it.
They used to ask me which school I followed in sports. And I says, anybody that plays University of Utah or BYU.
I like it.
I didn't care.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I do now, but I didn't then. So.
Yeah. Well, Quinn, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything that we haven't covered or any kind of closing thoughts or, things that you wanted to touch on that we haven't maybe touched on?
No, that's about it. I can't think of anything. I have a hard time conveying what I want to say anyway.
I think you've done a very good job. So then maybe just to end, as far as looking back on your life, as far as achievements you've done and stuff like that, what would you say some of the greatest achievements of your life you're most proud of, I guess, as we end this?
My family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm proud of them all.
Good.
Proud of being, I consider myself a good neighbor. I help when I can.
Yeah.
I hold no animus to anybody. So.
Good.
Hate has no place in anybody's life.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I don't talk politics or religion.
It's safer, right? Because I want to love you. Let's keep that going. Yeah.
Let's agree to disagree.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your family appreciates that they are so important to you. I'm sure you're a good. Yeah. How many children?
I got 3 children.
3 children. Okay.
We have. Yeah.
Any grandchildren?
I got 4.
4 grandchildren.
And 4 step-grandchildren.
Okay, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we just welcomed home our oldest granddaughter from her mission in Japan. So
oh, wow. That
awesome.
was
fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Quinn, thank you for coming on, and thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you're continuing to do for Lehi. You're obviously doing a lot of good.
Appreciate you listening to me.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Roots and Branches of Lehi. I hope today's story helped you feel a little more connected to the people who make up our community. Remember, every person here has a unique story, and together, we're what makes Lehi feel like home. If you know someone who would be a great fit for this podcast, please fill out the form in the show notes so we can reach out and schedule an interview. We'd love to hear from you.
A big thank you to our sponsors, the Work Harding Home Mortgage Team and Play Harding Nightly Vacation Rentals, for supporting this show and helping us bring our community closer together. Until next time, keep growing those roots and reaching out to your branches. Take care.